So today I'll be going over meiosis and sexual reproduction, as I will go over both phases of meiosis, key events like synapses, crossing over, independent assortment, and then homologous chromosomes. I will also include the comparison between meiosis and mitosis, how they compare and contrast, and then how genetic variation and reproductive stress contributes to meiosis as well. But beginning with meiosis, it includes two phases, as it is a type of cell division that occurs only in the formation of gametes, if that makes sense, as sperm and egg cells. The main goal is to reduce the chromosome number by half, going from diploid to haploid, so that when fertilization also occurs, the chromosome number is restored, if that makes sense. During prophase 1, known as PMAT, you can see here something very important also happens, like synapsis and crossing over. Synapsis is when homologous chromosomes from each one parent pair up tightly across their lengths. As during this pairing, segments of chromatids are exchanged in a process called crossing over, where this exchange, can kind of see it here, but a genetic material creates a new combination of genes that weren't present in either parent, which increasingly increases genetic diversity. During metaphase 1, the pairs of homologous chromosomes line up randomly across the cell's equator. This alignment is known as independent assortment, meaning that the way a pair of chromosomes lines up with no effect on how another pair lines up, as this randomness creates many genetic combinations. During anaphase 1, next, the segregation of homologous chromosomes occurs, and the homologous chromosomes are pulled apart to opposite poles of the cell. Each resulting cell receives only one chromosome from each pair, again contributing to the genetic variation. Now, going a little bit more in depth with that, prophase 1 starts with one diploid cell, which one chromatin, which is spread out chromosomes. After DNA in the chromatin replicates and moves the X-shaped chromosomes and replicated DNA to each sister chromatid. As like I said before, this process is synapsis, which swapping of parts of chromosome variation occurs. And then where those chromosomes pair up, forming a tetrad. As a nuclear membrane dissolves, now centrioles move to opposite ends of the cell and spindle fibers van out from them. In metaphase 1, homologous chromosomes, here's a picture, line up at the equator attached to spindle fibers from opposite poles. 4 different ways that they can line up. The spindle attaches to centromere of chromosomes. Now, during anaphase 1, the forming of new nucleus each side. Spindle fibers, like right here, separate homologous chromosomes and are pulled to opposite sides of the cell. Lastly, telophase 1 right here, and cytokinesis. One homologous chromosome at separate poles. The chromosome still has sister chromatids, but each are no longer identical, if that makes sense. Where because the allele exchange, spindle fibers are gone, meaning from that the nucleus forms around the chromosomes as well. Then cytokinesis occurs. Now, after this cytokinesis, we move on to PMAT2, known as meiosis 2. In prophase 2, as you can see on this side, these 4 next, there is no DNA replication, nuclear membrane disappears, and spindle fibers van out from centrioles. Metaphase 2, chromosomes in each cell line up at the equator and then attached to the spindle fibers form from the both poles, as the ends right here. Anaphase 2, sister chromatids from each chromosome separate and move to opposite poles. And once separated, they are just called chromosomes after that. Moving on to telophase, spindle fibers disappear and then the nuclear membrane reforms. And then cytokinesis occurs in both cells, which now making 4. And then by the end, PMAT2, all of this, meiosis 2, it ends with 4 genetically different haploid cells, or each only containing one set of chromosomes. Now, talking about meiosis versus mitosis, where was it? Yeah. Mitosis is used for growth, repair, and the production of identical body cells, while meiosis, on the other hand, is used simply for gametes and sexual reproduction, as it creates gametes with half the number of chromosomes. And then Mitosis has one division producing two identical haploid cells, while meiosis has two divisions called meiosis 1 and meiosis 2, like we briefly talked about, resulting in 4 different haploid cells that are genetically all unique and different from one another. And then the chromosome outcome, mitosis keeps the chromosomes number the same. For example, human cells stay the same at 46 chromosomes, while meiosis cuts the number in half, producing gametes with 23 chromosomes each. As when this fertilization occurs, the zygote restores the diploid number of 46. Now, I believe the last question, how meiosis contributes to genetic variation and reproductive success. But before that, here are just the little pictures of homologous pair of chromosomes, and then another little visual of synapsis and crossing over that we can see here. Now moving on to how meiosis does contribute to the genetic variation and reproductive stress entirely. Meiosis plays a major role in creating genetic variation, which is essential for evolution and the survival of species. Where the 3 main ways meiosis increases that genetic diversity is, like I said, crossing over, the independent assortment, and then the random fertilization. As here's a visual of that independent assortment. Where crossing over simply the mixes genes between homologous chromosomes. Independent assortment shuffles maternal and paternal chromosomes randomly into gametes. And in the random fertilization, since any sperm cell can fertilize an egg, it adds like an even more possibility of these combinations. As this genetic variation is extremely important because it allows populations to adapt to changing like the environments. For example, like if a disease or environmental change does occur, some individuals may have like those genetic traits that help them survive and reproduce, where like over time these traits become more common, improving their species and like just overall success. Now, I believe that is it. So in conclusion, meiosis is not just about making sex cells, but it's about ensuring that every generation is genetically like unique through processes like synapsis, crossing over, independent assortment, the segregation of the independent chromosomes. Meiosis produces diversity, moreover promotes diversity, which drives evolution and the long-term survival of species. So yeah, that is meiosis and sexual reproduction.